Hello and welcome to BloombergQuint. We have with us Revenue Secretary Dr. Hasmukh Adhia. Dr. Adhia, thank you so much for speaking to BloombergQuint. So, in the first 100 days of GST's implementation, what has been the learning for you? What were the problems that taxpayers were facing initially, and what were the challenges, according to you, faced by taxpayers? And what has the government done to address all these challenges or problems?
It's a big question, but if I may briefly tell you, the main learning for us in the first 100 days was that we need to be flexible always. Because in a big reform of this kind, there would always be some sort of initial difficulties, some of which might have been anticipated and some of which might not have been anticipated. So the government has to be flexible in order to solve these difficulties of people, and the government has to take action in real time. And that's what we learned. As you are aware, in the first 100 days, there were a lot of small-scale industries and exporters who found certain difficulties, and the government immediately came out with a remedy for that. And so it's been a quick action. We have tried to immediately address the difficulties faced by people. Time and again, whenever required, we also extended the deadline for filing of returns in order to give people some more time to adjust. So these are the things.
Right, sir. And so the GST Council had also allowed filing summarized returns or GSTR 3B till December. So there were some initial problems with the GSTN portal. The portal could not take the load of so many returns. So when could we see filing of GSTR 1, 2, and 3 returns, monthly returns on GSTN portal? And when will you notify days for filing GSTR 1, 2, and 3 for August and September?
Look, actually, the first few months are always difficult. So we decided that instead of straight away taking everybody to the regular cycle of filing of 1, 2, 3, we should have a summary return self-assessed by SSCs so that they get into this habit. So for 6 months, we already declared that we will have 3B. Now, simultaneously, we have to also get into 1, 2, 3 because we are not waiving off 1, 2, 3 for the first 6 months. Now, 1, 2, 3, the first cycle is very important because it's a new mechanism in which all sellers of goods and services will be filing their invoices in GSTR 1, based on which the purchase side will get populated, auto-populated by the computer in everybody's account. And then the seller and the purchaser, they will try to match the return. And if there are any missing entries, then the purchaser is given the right to enter those missing entries. And after those missing entries are entered in GSTR 2, GSTR 3 is again auto-populated, auto-created by the computer, and you have to accept it and pay the money. This is the cycle of 1, 2, 3. Now, since it was a completely new process in which 3-stage returns were involved, we thought we'll give people a full experience of it for a longer period. So we extended the date of filing of return GSTR 1 for July by 50 days. Yesterday was the last day, and now of course GSTR 2 has been generated for everybody. People will look at it for another 20 days, and by end of October they will be required to accept their GSTR 2 and submit it.
Right. So the last date for filing GSTR returns was October 10th, but not all eligible taxpayers have actually gone ahead and filed those returns. So what is the what do you see as the problem that taxpayers are not filing returns on by the scheduled deadline, and what action would the government now take on non-compliance?
Taking immediate action against them is not desirable. We need to understand the reasons for non-filing. We are trying to do that. We will actually get into the reasons for non-filing. Now we will analyze this data because for the month of July, so far something like 54 lakh returns have been filed with 3B. And GSTR 1 have been about 45.99, so about 46 lakhs GSTR 1 till yesterday. Now there is a gap of 8 lakhs there. So we'll try to see what is the reason for this gap of 8 lakhs. And then also there could be, the reason could be that some people do not have any transactions to report. Some people may be simply B2C and they may not worry about invoice matching, etc. So we'll have to see what are the reasons, and it could also be a misunderstanding among people that not everybody is supposed to file GSTR 1. So if that is the case, after doing the survey, we will try to take corrective action. If it is information gap, then we will try to remove the information gap.
My next question is just a follow-up of this, sir. If you go by the data of tax collections, the number of taxpayers who filed returns for the month of August has fallen by 1 lakh if you compare it with July numbers. So although the number of days on which tax was collected for the month of August was only 25, if you compare it with July, on which 29 days tax was collected. So what is the reason according to you for this shortfall, and what could the government do in order to bridge this shortfall and make and allow all more taxpayers to file returns?
Look, the tax income which we have received is not directly proportional to the number of returns filed, because as we have done some analysis, 90% of the income comes from 10% of the returns. So the big taxpayers only pay us the tax. As far as revenue trend is concerned, if you are counting ki there was a reduction of 2,000 crore in the next month. Now, these are initial months of GST, and it was expected that in the initial months, more revenue will come in IGST, because for every interstate transfer of goods, including by the same company to its own depot, IGST was required. So it was expected that there will be a greater flow of IGST in the beginning, but as you know, IGST is only a washout tax. After 2-3 months, the flow of IGST will decline, and the total amount received by government in cash will also decline. First 2 months is no indication, because we had expected it will be this thing. So we'll have to actually watch the revenue trend of SGST and CGST. That is the most important trend, and that we will have to keep watching for the next 6 months, because of the transition credit which is claimed in the month of July and August, the difference will come, and all these numbers will settle down only after 6 months.
And so when would a clear trend would emerge?
After 6 months. The clear trend will only come after 6 months.
Considering all export refunds for
so many
exports
factors.
and
Refunds are also yet to be given. So even the refund will be adjusted from income. So we'll have to see all these factors, and then our clear trend can emerge.
So the GST Council also in its last meeting has approved a concept note for revising rates in future. So according to the same note or the discussion paper, items of mass consumption which fall under the highest tax slab of 28% will be reviewed only after a period of 3 months. So can that be assumed that rate revisions going ahead in future would happen only after 3 months?
Yes. The general idea is that only, that we need to do a thorough job now, instead of piecemeal changes in the tax rate. Now, based on the approach paper, the fitment committee should work on it, should come out with its definite recommendation, and that recommendation would be in respect of so many items, So it would definitely do a thorough job. But when will that happen? Of course, the approach paper says that it should be done after some time.
Okay, and so it also says that we would soon move to a single GST rate structure of 18% or a dual GST rate of 18 or 12%.
It doesn't say so. It doesn't say so.
Okay, so if going ahead in future, so if we plan to have a single GST rate structure, how would items that fall under the lowest tax slab of 5% be dealt with? Whether they'll be exempt?
But we are not even talking about it now.
Okay.
Approach paper doesn't talk about it.
Okay, and so when see some rationalization in rates going ahead?
We don't know. It depends on the entire exercise becoming, entire exercise being done, and after that we go to the council and decide.
Right, sir. Okay, so there are also talks that petrol and diesel would be brought under GST. In fact, Maharashtra Finance Minister recently said that many states have agreed to bring petrol and diesel under GST. So would we see petrol and diesel coming under the ambit of GST anytime soon, sir?
Well, I don't know what individually some ministers have expressed their opinion, but collectively in the council, this subject has not been discussed so far, and unless all states agree to this proposal, it's difficult to bring it in. So we'll see what will be the best time to discuss this in the council and take a decision.
Right. So the GST law also has an enabling provision of anti-profiteering, that people do not take undue advantage of GST. Although the state level steering committee and the standing committee has been set up, the National Anti-Profiteering Authority is yet to be operational. So when do we see that happening, and have you received any complaints so far regarding anti-profiteering?
We haven't received many complaints, to be very frank. The screening committees at the state level have been set up. Steering committee at the Government of India level has also been set up. But so far, the flow of complaint is not much. There are miscellaneous individual complaints in small cases, which I'm sure at local level the officers can sort of settle it down. But anti-profiteering authority comes at the last stage. First, the complaints have to be screened at the state level by the screening committee, if it is a state level player. If it is a national level player against which the complaint is there, it will straight away come to standing committee in the Government of India. And then after examination by this committee, if they are of the view that yes, this case needs to be investigated, the entire case will go to the DG Safeguard for investigation. DG Safeguard will get all the papers from the company, and then the DG Safeguard can then give its finding to the anti-profiteering authority. So this entire process will take some time. So by the time the cases are ready for being taken to anti-profiteering authority, the authority will be ready.
Right, sir. So the central government also has to compensate states for the losses that they incur in the first 5 years of GST's implementation, which has to be done bi-monthly. So how much of compensation has been released for the month of July and August, and which were the states that have asked for highest compensation, sir?
We haven't actually made this figure public, but yes, July and August compensation has been given to states.
If you could share the figure with us, sir.
Not yet.
And the highest state, the state that has asked for highest?
I don't know the figures.
Okay, sir. I'll keep it at that. Thank you so much for speaking to
Thank you.
BloombergQuint, sir.